Welcome in, CBS Sports college football writer Barrett Sallee. Barrett, your reaction here to Utah beating Florida, avenging their loss from 1 year ago without Cameron Rising on the field.
Well, I think first things first, Kyle Whittingham is a genius. The guy does not get enough credit for being what he is, and that's one of the best coaches in college football. I think they all kind of knew Cam Rising might or might not play throughout the course of fall camp. To have this game plan ready with Bryson Barnes to come out hot and then use Nate Johnson to supplement that in the running game was brilliant. And I think Kyle Whittingham said it best at halftime. He looked back at previous years and noticed that in season openers, he came out conservative. So what do you do with the guy who's not even supposed to be starting? You do that to Money Parks right out of the gate. You go completely against your tendencies, and that set the tone. And after that, I mean, the Florida offense was just in full-on panic mode. There's no reason why Graham Mertz should ever throw 44 passes in one game. The play calling from Billy Napier was bizarre. He didn't trust his offensive line, clearly. But why do you want to put Mertz back there and get hit consistently? It didn't make any sense to me. Maybe they should have pounded the rock a little earlier, but once it got out of hand, he really had no choice. Really disappointing play calling from Billy Napier and fantastic preparation from Kyle Whittingham.
Yeah, speaking of preparation, it looked like a lack of preparation from Florida's side.
Yes.
Take you back to the second quarter when there's a penalty with Utah punting and there's two number threes on the field. Of course, people who know college football, you can have two number threes on your roster. They just can't be on the field at the same time. And those are those penalties you can't. What are we doing here? What are we doing? It allows them to get the first down, and then they turn it into a touchdown.
Yeah, when you have issues like that, same numbers, you have to have them because there's, 105, 106 county walk-ons, whatever players on a team. But if you're both going to be on the field at the same time on punt return, on kickoff or whatever, you practice that. You tell the guy who's supposed to change his jersey to change his jersey. And you go over it consistently, and it didn't happen. That's poor coaching, poor preparation for Billy Napier, and sloppy play all around. Key mistakes in key spots. 4th and 1 on the 12-yard line going in. A false start penalty. Then they miss a field goal on the next play. It was a disaster over and over and over again for Florida. And I think we saw a little bit of this last year with LSU. I mean, I remember you and I, Hakeem, after the LSU-Florida State game last year, were just laughing about how bad LSU was in terms of preparation. Turns out they won the SEC West. I'm not going to say that Florida is going to do that and to go around and win the SEC East now, but you can improve things like that. But very disappointing. You know you're going on the road. You know it's going to be a hostile atmosphere. Those little things come back to kill you, and they were all over the place for this Florida Gators team.
Yeah, Florida had just 13 rushing yards in the game. Graham Mertz, the Wisconsin transfer, sacked 5 times. We know that Utah lays the wood. We know defensively they are stout, and they will bring it each and every week. When you look at Utah, and at some point we expect Cameron Rising to come back. Final year in the Pac-12, back-to-back Pac-12 champs. What's your outlook for this program?
They can win the Pac-12 and they can get to the college football playoff. I'd say they're a long shot, but they're not a no shot, because if you get Cam Rising back, then the offense returns to what it is, right? We know what their defense is. They were without one of their best defensive tackles as well. And look what they did to Florida. They just lit Graham Mertz up. If you get Cam Rising back, you don't have to sort of navigate through all those quarterback issues like Kyle Whittingham did. He did a great job of it on Thursday night, but you can't live like that, right? But if you bring Cam Rising back, you kind of get the best of both worlds. You get the experience, you get the running, you get the ability to take the top off of defense, and you don't have to use Bryson Barnes. You might use Nate Johnson, but you don't have to use Bryson Barnes. So if Cam Rising comes back, this team can make the college football playoff. If he doesn't, they're going to lose 2 or 3 games, because you cannot coach around that quarterback issue for a full season. Did a great job. Kyle Whittingham did a great job tonight, but that's not sustainable.
And credit right goes to Kyle Whittingham for scheduling Baylor in week 2, right?
That's right.
I mean, that's a huge game for Utah already in week 2, and they do have a difficult schedule rest of way.
Yeah, they do. But I think it's interesting you say that, because I think in other conferences, it wouldn't be viewed as that much of a liability. And in the Pac-12, typically it would. But You look at Utah's schedule, they have 4 games against ranked Pac-12 teams, probably a 5th in the Pac-12 championship game if you go there. And I've said all offseason, Pac-12's really good this year. I'm talking about better than the Big 12, better than the ACC. And this is the conference this year that can have a one-loss conference champ get into the college football playoff. So, yeah, they didn't schedule very well. Obviously, the win over Florida doesn't count as a conference game, neither does Baylor. But this team has such a tough in-conference schedule that they can afford a loss and still make the college football playoff because the Pac-12 is going to be so good this year.
All right, so now we talk about what's ahead for Florida, because you remember last season they beat Utah and the hype train was full steam ahead with Anthony Richardson, right? And then they ended up having a losing season. Yes, they went to a bowl game, but it was a losing season under Billy Napier, his first season in Gainesville, back-to-back losing seasons. So, of course, they can turn this around, but when you look at Florida and what they have in their offense, does it give you much hope? Are you inspired for Florida in the SEC East?
No, not at all. Because, look, I know Graham Mertz had his career best passing day with 333 yards. That's a problem when you have to do that, when you have to ask Graham Mertz to do that. I don't believe he can be a playmaker. I don't believe he can consistently connect on passes deep downfield against SEC secondaries. And, yeah, I mean, Utah's defensive front, its front seven's fierce. We all know that. So is pretty much every front seven in the SEC. So the rebuilt offensive line is still very much under construction, and I don't think that's something that you can fix right now. The experience isn't there. The talent's getting there. It's okay, but you're not going to have that kind of success against SEC front seven. So unlike last year when there was hope for Florida, I think what we saw on Thursday night is actually what Florida is going to be for the rest of the season. It's still a rebuilding process. Dan Mullen did not recruit very well. Billy Napier is doing a great job of that. So you give him time, let him keep recruiting. They're going to be okay. But I think this game against Utah is a true indication of what Florida actually is going to be this year.